I'm Natalia Bonner. Happy Monday. Okay, I'm excited to be here today and share a scallop border with you today. You know that I love scallops. I actually have an online class called Let's Stitch Scallops where I actually teach you step by step how to machine quilt several different scallop border designs. So if you do want a little bit more scallop border design, make sure you do check out my online classes. Actually, I have lots of online classes. That's just one of them. So today, this one's just really simple and it's more of a modern quilt, I'm going to dare to say. And I'm sure that there's people out there, maybe somebody's going to tell me that you can't quilt scallops because they're maybe a more traditional on a modern quilt. But guess what? I don't believe in rules in quilting. I believe if you like the look of it, then go for it. Why can't you quilt that design there? So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here today, showing you exactly how I quilt this fun little scallop border design. So you will see I will be doing a little bit of ruler work and a little bit of free motion quilting. A lot of different things will be in this fun little video. So I do all of my quilting on my Gamble 22-inch machine. I am going to be using so fine thread here on the top and bottom line thread on my bobbin. I will stick with gray thread throughout this whole entire quilt, top and bottom. And I do have my stitch length set at 12 stitches per inch. The batting that I'm using on this quilt is one layer of Quilter Stream Poly Deluxe. Just one more thing before we get stitching. This today is just a little bit of the machine quilting that I'm doing on this cool quilt. If you do want to see more of this quilting or more quilting like this where I go deeper into my machine quilting and show you my whole process, make sure you do check out my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Natalia Bonner. Over on Patreon, I actually take you, like I said, deeper into my machine quilting process. Plus, when you sign up over there, you actually gain access to all the back videos, which is quite a few now. So make sure you do check that out. But in the meantime, let's get stitching. So when I'm machine quilting, I like to start out, because I am quilting on a long arm machine, on the left side of the quilt as far down as my throat space will allow me. With my machine quilting, most often I do start out with the border, the outside border, and then work my way from there. Occasionally there are points where I'll quilt the border last, or if I'm changing thread colors, things like that. I might not always quilt it first, but most often that's what I'm doing. From there, after I've got it all loaded, basted, and ready to start quilting, I'm going to go through and mark those reference points. So like I mentioned before, you can see where the blocks come together. I just held my machine quilting ruler, used blue Mark Beyond marker, and marked an increment straight out from that point. Once I've marked that increment, now I'm going to use my machine quilting ruler and stitch those point-to-point scallops. So the ruler that I am using here is the number 12 curve by the Quilted Pineapple. Now, I know somebody's going to comment and ask me, so if I want to buy more, if you really want to get into curved rulers and scallops and things like that, is the number 12 ruler by the Quilted Pineapple the next scallop that you would recommend? And I wish I could say, yes, that's a fabulous ruler, but what I actually would say is I recommend all of the Quilted Pineapple rulers, because when I mark out a design like this, I grab my whole set of curved rulers and I'll use those rulers and audition them on the quilt to see exactly what my scallops are going to look like. Personally, I've found that I do use pretty much all of them all the time. So once I've stitched that scallop all the way across from the left to the right, going up the left side as much as my throat space will allow me, and then stitching the scallops across the quilt down the right side. At that point, now I'm going to switch to my 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler and stitch in the ditch back across the top of the quilt to the point where I began my machine quilting. Once I get back to that point where I began my machine quilting, now I'm going to go back through and add an echo to the outside of that first scallop border. So with my machine quilting, I love to add echoes, especially with a design like this. I feel like the echo and leaving that small open space, like you can see here, it's a 1/4 inch spacing. I'm holding my machine quilting ruler so that the outside, the curve, is right on top of my previous stitch line. So So that makes my lines evenly spaced 1/4 of an inch apart. But by adding those lines, whatever fill I add to the inside now, and then I'm going to also add a fill to the outside, I'm still going to have a place for my eye to rest, and I'm not going to lose those scallops in all of the machine quilting. So I definitely love to add echoes just to give my eye a place to rest. Then, once I've stitched that echo all the way across, now I'm going to go into my first fill, which is going to be evenly spaced straight lines. So these straight lines are going to be spaced 1/2 inch apart. So using my 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler, I lie the ruler right on top of my previous stitch line, so the first marked line. On my machine quilting rulers, those rulers actually do indicate 1/2 inch. So that's 1/2 inch from my needle position. Pretty cool. It's super helpful with machine quilting rulers to have those markings already there for you, so you don't have to do additional measuring or markings on the quilt. So I'll stitch along my previous stitch line along that scallop to travel up. Then when I stitch across to the outside of the quilt, I'll just travel right up across that outside of the quilt. I'll continue stitching those straight lines, filling in the left side all the way until I get close to my corner. Now, when I get close to that corner, you can see that I have marked a 45-degree angle increment. So I used the blue Mark Be Gone and marked an angular line right through the corner. Now, with a design like this, personally, I feel like it looks better if you do stitch a mitered corner if you're using straight lines like this. Even if it's not pieced in a mitered corner, I feel like overall it does look better for your quilting to create a miter with a design like this. So you can see that I stitched to that center marked line reference point, and then from there to create my corner, I rotate my ruler and stitch a straight line right up to the top. And then I'm going to just work back and forth, stitching to that center marked line, adjusting my ruler and stitching back up to the top and working until I finish that section completely. From there, then I'll continue on stitching those straight lines all the way across the top of the quilt and down on the right side, filling in the outside of that scallop completely. Now, as I advance my quilt, I'll repeat the same process. This scallop does fit inside of my throat space, so as I advance, I'll stitch one scallop out and work from there, just one at a time, moving down my quilt. I will not turn my quilt to quilt the scallops unless the scallop is large enough that it's larger than my throat space. And here's an image of that portion of the scallop after that part's complete. Now, I could have left it quilted just like this, but you know me. You know that I always have to add more. So now I'm going to go back through and add some pebbles to that open space. All right, let's add some pebbles. So starting again on the left side, as far down as my throat will allow me, or at the bottom of that scallop, I'm going to fill in that scallop with pebbles. So when I quilt pebbles like this, you can see that I do really try to alternate the size. I like them to be more random because then if there's ever a place where something happens and they're not uniform, it's okay. You don't notice that one is wrong or one is not perfect. A great way to help hide your imperfections. So I start as low as my throat space will allow me and then work my way up to the top. From there, I'll work my way all the way across, stitching those fun pebbles. And here is the border after all of those pebbles are all quilted. So now you can see, if I would have just had one line, I didn't have that echo line separating that outside from those pebbles, it really would have just blended together. You can really see here how important that echo line is. It really does add so much to a border design. I hope you all found just a little bit of inspiration from today's fun, simple scallop border design. Like I said, make sure you do check out my online class, Let's Stitch Scallops. Have a great day, everybody.